Fanservice games can be an awful lot of fun. They generally play into B-grade sensibilities, and the sheer nonsense of most of them makes them really entertaining and enjoyable, and I thought we'd do a video looking at the top 5 of them. There's been an awful lot more released over the last couple of years, I think because digital distribution is allowing publishers to bring them out in English for the niche that kind of get the sense of humour and are willing to play along with it. So there's a lot of them, and I thought, yeah, like I said, I'd do a top 5 looking at some of the better examples of them on the PlayStation 4. Sit back and enjoy. So for the first entry, I'm actually going to cheat a bit and roll 2 games into one. I'm going to roll the 2 Galgo games into one because though mechanically they're a little bit different, with the second being an improvement in general over the first, the fan service comes from the same place. They are both rail shooters, and in these games, you, rather than being equipped with a gun to put bullets into these people, your role instead is to shoot them up with pheromones. They are attacking you with love notes and kisses and things, and if you get hit by that stuff enough, you'll never find your true love, and it'll be game over and a really bad time for you. So instead, you need to shoot the girls with pheromones to make them collapse in ecstasy and leave you alone, so you can then go and find the love of your life and all that kind of stuff. So as you can tell, it is a very nonsense kind of title, very nonsense story, very nonsense concept, and it was a little bit controversial because of the setting and the school, and fair enough, that's an odd place to set one of these kinds of games. But I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a titillating game, and that's certainly not the case, and the developers certainly didn't intend on it being that from the conversations that I've had with them. It's a satire instead, and it's definitely poking fun at the kind of expectations around fan service that people would probably have going into this game. So yeah, it's gently subversive in a kind of entertaining and not too explicit way, and it's just a lot of nonsense. It plays quite well, both of them play quite well, they're amusing enough, and yeah, they're just enjoyable games. So they're one of the better examples, I guess, of fan service being done in a satirical manner on the PlayStation 4 as well. So if you get a chance, check them out. Next up, we have a game that is very much a homage to the kind of horror films, straight-to-video horror films of the 80s and 90s. If you remember the kind of the exploitation horror genre, and grew up kind of watching those movies, as I did, this one is kind of nostalgic in an odd way, and it's amusingly so. It's a game in which you play as one of 5 different girls, and they're basically looking to survive a night where zombies are attacking their school, and do so by, you know, piling them full of bullets and stuff, and hitting them with baseball bats, as you can see. And yeah, it's very exploitative in a very deliberate and nonsensical way. The core mechanic, I guess, or the core difference between this game and a standard shooter is that you can press a button to have the girl rip her uniform off and throw it out, and when she does that, the zombies, every zombie in the radius will completely ignore her and basically jump on the uniform, which means that they'll pile up and you can basically shoot them all down quite easily. It's a one-off kind of attack for a level, but it's a remarkably effective one, and yeah, it really plays to the game's sense of humour. I think anybody who takes this one seriously, like any other fan servicey game, is probably not playing it right. We couldn't do a fan service top 5 without mentioning one of the Hyperdimension Neptunia series, because that is perhaps what they are more famous for than anything else. The main reason that these games are kind of fan servicey actually is the actual character design. They are designed by a character artist named Sunako, and she is a really well-known fan servicey style artist. And what you can see in the action here doesn't seem too fan servicey, I guess. This is Cyberdimension Neptunia, by the way, if I didn't mention that before. It doesn't look too fan servicey, but what happens is basically in cutscenes and things like that, there are often still images used to kind of describe the scene, because this is a budget game and they couldn't afford to do it all within the engine. So instead they show you kind of high quality drawn scenes from Sunako showing, you know, the action, and those scenes tend to be very fan servicey. with lots of underwear and all kinds of things, skirts flying up all over the place, and that's certainly the case with Cyberdimension Neptunia. There are a lot of Hyperdimension Neptunia games. Actually, there's probably not that many on PlayStation 4, but of them all, I find this one's probably the best example of it. There's also plenty of costumes you can get, which are plenty fanservicey, and the thing is, Tsunako doesn't just do fanservicey, sexy kind of nonsense. She also draws with such a beautiful style, and that's really why she's developed a really strong fan base over the years. It's kind of classy fan service, I guess. It's funny, it's nonsense and all that, but it's just really high quality art, and she's an amazing artist. So Compile Heart's very lucky to have her, really. And next up is the game that's probably the most notorious for fan service of them all, Dead or Alive Xtreme 3. This game wasn't actually released officially in the West. There's an English version which you can buy out of Hong Kong and Southeast Asia, but the game itself was never... They never thought that it would have much of an audience outside of Japan, or they were worried that the game would be quite controversial in the West, because it is basically pure voyeurism. There isn't too much of a game behind Dead or Alive Xtreme 3. There's a couple of mini games that you can play, I guess, but the purpose of the game is basically to win those mini games so you can earn cash, which you can use to buy ever more revealing bikinis for the various characters, and then play dress up, and then go and take photos of them in the photo mode. So like I said, it's basically purely voyeurism, and when they added VR support to it, that didn't really help things, because the VR is basically just the photo viewing mode, but now you can do it through your headset and see everything as though it is more real as such. But the thing is, this game is really, really enjoyable. It's well made. It it does the voyeurism thing so well and so amusingly, and it's hard to actually put the game down once you start playing. It's kind of a casual game in the sense that the games, like you see here, the mini games aren't too difficult, and they're very simple but enjoyable, easy to play. It's kind of game that you just tune out while you're playing, and it's certainly a premium example of how fan service can work in modern games. So for the last game, it's a little bit different to the previous four, because while those previous four all deliberately made something of the fan service and the titillation, whether that be for the purposes of satire for the first three, or for the purposes of a kind of pin-up voyeurism in the case of Dead or Alive Xtreme, Blue Reflection doesn't actually try to be fanservicey. It has a reputation for being a highly fanservicey game, and indeed it's rated R18+ in Australia and all of that kind of stuff, and it certainly has some fanservicey elements in it, in that it has girls in swimsuits and magical girl transformation sequences like the ones that you're seeing on the screen in front of you. It has all of that, and there's bath scenes and shower scenes too. It has that kind of stuff that could be fanservicey, but the way that the game's written actually makes it feel very not fanservicey. And it's unfortunate that so few people played it, I think because in part of its reputation, and because it was really hard to find. But I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about this game, and it's kind of unfortunate, because the game deserves better than to be dismissed as a purely fanservicey kind of thing. So what Blue Reflection actually is a coming-of-age story, and it owes a lot to Persona 5, actually, both in terms of the way that it does character development and the way that the characters build relationships with one another, and they themselves come to terms with their lot in life, learn to deal with disappointment, find their roles, and learn about how the world works. At the same time, mechanically, Blue Reflection actually owes a lot to Persona 5 in the way it does its dungeons and things like that. So it's clearly designed to be a bit of a Persona clone as such, and it works really well on that regard. But I think the interesting thing is the fan services. You see here swimsuits, and there's a bath scene coming up and all that kind of stuff. Those are presented in the context of kind of slice of life stuff, and it's deliberately done to be as genderless as possible, because there is only one gender in this game. All the characters are female, and there's no boys. They talk about wanting to have a boyfriend or something with one another, but you never see a male character, and I think that actually helps the game kind of in terms of not being as fanservicey as people might think of it as. Rather, all of this stuff is presented as kind of the very mundane parts of life. Yes, they have swim classes. Yes, they have a bath. All of that kind of stuff. And then that's contrasted with the magical girl sequences when they're in the dungeons to create that kind of mix between the real world and the fantasy. And it's really intriguing and it's really enjoyable. And I think it's, like I said, I think people saw the screenshots of this game and blew it all out of proportion. So while it's on my list as a kind of top 5 fan service game, it's actually there more because of the reputation the game has, but when you actually play it, you see that it's not quite the case. So, but anyway, I really wanted to put it there because I want people to play the game anyway. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you at the next video.